Hello, my name is Sydney, and today I'll be talking about the effects of phosphates in the kidney and the body. First off, what are phosphates? Well, phosphates are ions that are comprised of phosphorus and oxygen, but can also contain other common elements such as sodium, calcium, potassium, and aluminum. There are many different variations of phosphates, usually falling into 4 categories, and each have their own uses, with each category being defined by the number of phosphorus atoms found within the compound. And what is the role of phosphates in the body? Phosphorus is the second most abundant substance in the body and is derived from phosphates. It helps in maintaining strong bones, healthy teeth such as the enamel coating, and can also act as a urinary buffer. Not only that, but the phosphorus derived from phosphates are important for cells since certain cellular processes such as energy production consumes phosphorus. Now, what products use phosphates and why? A large majority of groceries you can find will have some form of phosphate additives, with some notable foods being cheese, ice cream, cocoa, and dark colas. This is because phosphate additives can be used to enhance the flavor of processed foods and also help retain the color and the moistness of frozen foods. Some phosphates can be used as a preservative or to help act as a buffer, help acidify, or help emulsify foods. So if you were to go to a grocery store looking for products that are dairy, certain white, red meats, or certain proteins, seafood, and snacks such as seeds like sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds will be very rich in phosphorus. And how are phosphates absorbed into the body? Well, phosphates are absorbed into the body through the GI or gastrointestinal tract. They go down the mouth, into the pharynx, into the esophagus, to the stomach, and in the stomach it'll start breaking down those proteins, and then in the small intestines it'll finish breaking down those proteins and also emulsify and break down the fat. And once the proteins and the lipids get broken down, then you'll have the phosphates that get absorbed into the body. And once they get absorbed, they start to circulate and they go target the bones specifically. And the bones will then use and then secrete out the phosphorus again, and then the phosphorus will then be secreted out of the kidneys over a period of time. The absorption of phosphates and phosphorus is through a series of hormones that is affected by the parathyroid hormone, secretions from the bone, and also secretions from the kidneys. In a healthy adult, the dietary intake of phosphates should equal the urinary output over a 24-hour period. So if an adult, a healthy adult, were to ingest about 1,500 milligrams of phosphorus, 1/3 or 500 milligrams will get, secreted out through the stool, and then the other 2/3 will then enter the body. Once they enter the body, they'll go to the bones and then back out into the extracellular space, and then slowly over the course of a day or 24 hours, the kidneys will filter out the rest of the phosphorus. And it's worth noting that if you were to look at the diagram here, it says 500 milligrams get secreted out through the stool, and then 1,200 get absorbed into the body. That is because about 200 milligrams of phosphorus stays inside the body and then gets secreted into the GI tract again, which is why instead of 1,000 milligrams, you have 1,200 milligrams being absorbed back into the body. And how can increased levels of phosphates in the body be harmful or dangerous? Well, the condition where you have an abnormally high level amount of phosphorus in the body is called hyperphosphatemia. And some conditions that could derive from hyperphosphatemia are progression in CKD, nephrocalcinosis, and also metabolic acidosis. Now let's talk about progression of CKD from hyperphosphatemia. Chronic kidney disease, or CKD, is a condition where your kidneys cannot do their job properly. And this gets worsened from the increased serum phosphate, or the amount of phosphorus in the blood, due to the increased load on the nephrons. During chronic kidney disease progression, the size of your nephrons actually decrease, which lowers the GFR, or how well your kidneys can filter out things from the blood, which means it can't do its job as well. And then the increased load, which if you look at the diagram below, the increased load per nephron actually worsens its filtration rate, which means it needs to call help from the parathyroid hormone and also FGF23. And those two hormones get increased, and also metabolic acidosis starts to get increased as well, because you have, a lack of the kidney doing their job, which makes the blood acidic because your kidneys cannot take out those toxins. And now let's look at the pathology of nephrocalcinosis from hyperphosphatemia. And nephrocalcinosis is a condition where calcium deposits begin to form in the renal parenchyma and the tubules. This is due to high levels of calcium in the filtrate that exceed the saturation limit, causing the calcium to form clumps and plaque in the interstitial space of the tissues. And due to the compromised kidney function from chronic kidney disease, the parathyroid hormone and FGF23 levels start to increase, as I said before, and that high level of PTH causes an influx of free calcium in the blood because parathyroid hormone pulls calcium out from the bones and into the bloodstream. And then that high level of calcium is sustained because of the parathyroid trying to compensate for the kidney not doing its job properly, or its ability to not do it properly, and thus creating conditions for nephrocalcinosis because it feeds into itself as a sort of positive feedback loop. And if you look at the X-ray, circled for you are actually two kidneys that have nephrocalcinosis. Those bright white spots there are actually calcium deposits that have hardened and found its way into the interstitial space of the tissues in the kidneys and have also formed. And granted, it's worth noting that the calcium deposits are not purely calcium. It can also be, calcium phosphates and calcium oxides that can also be deposited inside the kidneys there. Now let's talk about metabolic acidosis from hyperphosphatemia. And due to the lack of kidney function from the aforementioned conditions, the waste products and the toxins cannot be filtered out and caused a lower pH value in the blood. And these high phosphorus levels can result in acidic compounds being formed, such as phosphoric and/or phosphorus acid, which neutralizes the bicarbonate and turns the blood acidic. This condition is usually seen in ESRD patients or end-stage renal disease, which is a very severe form or very highly progressed form of CKD, where your filtration rate is very low, and having that paired with the continued ingestion of phosphates from your diet, it can cause acidosis, metabolic acidosis. And however, it's also worth noting that even though it's unlikely, metabolic acidosis can still develop in someone that has normal functioning kidneys. And if this condition does, get severe enough, it can very quickly cause shock and / or death. And hyperphosphatemia and its link to chronic kidney disease is actually much more likely than people think. Kidney disease is usually asymptomatic, and so is nephrocalcinosis, is also asymptomatic. But cardiovascular disease, not cardiovascular, chronic kidney disease is caused by diabetes and / or hypertension, which are two very common conditions. And chronic kidney disease affects about 1 in every 7 people, and about 90% of the people that have kidney disease are actually unaware that they have it. And then to further stress this, about every 1 in 3 adults are at some form of risk for developing chronic kidney disease. And this is due to food being used now as, this is due to phosphates being used as a food additive. And the recommended daily amount for phosphate or phosphorus is usually about 1,250 milligrams in teens and only 700 milligrams in adults. And with the increased amount and popularity of having phosphate additives being in foods, depending on your diet, it is actually very easy to go up to 2 or even 3 times the recommended daily amount of phosphorus or phosphates. And even though the upper limit is about 4,000 milligrams for teens and 3,000 milligrams for adults, the maximum that is chronic kidney disease patient should have is 800 milligrams, period. So they shouldn't have any more than that max. That is their upper limit. And, looking back at the second bullet, if 90% of people who have chronic kidney disease are unaware and are easily going over 2 or 3 times amount over the adult recommended amount, that means they're almost hitting 3 times the maximum that they should be having for their condition, which means that chronic kidney disease is actually going to progress to end-stage renal disease much, much faster. And since kidney disease is asymptomatic and so is nephrocalcinosis, two very serious conditions, to get tested for it and find if you actually have it, you should get a BUN test or blood urea nitrogen test to gauge the function of your kidneys and see the filtration rate to see if you actually have chronic kidney disease or not. And these are my sources, my bibliography, and that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.